The new Pagani hypercar will cost you a cool £5 million. Even a new Rolex Daytona will cost you over 20 grand. But what if I told you that you can buy a Pagani Rolex lookalike for just £60? Well, today we'll be taking a look at this. The infamous Pagani Daytona chronograph, which promises a lot for that very low retail price. Okay, this isn't quite the same Pagani that you may be familiar with. This is instead the unrelated Pagani Design watch brand that I covered a few months ago. For over 99% less than the Rolex it's based on, it isn't going to compare in terms of quality. However, I'm left wondering, do you really only get 1% of the watch? Let's find out. To start with, the watch arrived in the typical Pagani design packaging, which is simple but suitable considering the cost of the watch. It comes with a couple of extras which we'll mention later, and I'll link this watch in the video description in case you want to check it out. This model is listed on Aliexpress as the PD1644, and it comes in with a case diameter of 40mm, excluding the crown and guards, a thickness of 11.4mm, and a lug-to-lug of 48. These dimensions are pretty close to the original Rolex, it's just a touch slimmer and has a slightly larger lug length. On wrist, it wears slightly larger than you might expect considering the width, for a few reasons. Firstly, the large pushers and crown arrangement make the watch look wider. And more importantly, the lug-to-lug size feels boosted by the inflexible center links of the bracelet, which protrude past the lugs to produce an overall length of 52.8mm. As such, this watch looks big for my skinny wrists and should suit those with more average to large size ones. I've seen this PD1644 floating around in various YouTube videos. However, it appears that Pagani have upgraded this watch based potentially on some of that feedback. The Forerunner may have looked the same, but it only had a measly 30 meters of water resistance, rendering the watch splash-proof at best. And that was pretty disappointing given the fact that that watch featured a screw-down crown and screw-down pushers. Fortunately, according to the manufacturer, this newer 2020 model boasts a much more respectable 100 meters of water resistance, meaning you should be able to swim in this without any concerns. Several outlets appear to be selling the older version with the lower water resistance, so make sure you check the specs before pulling the trigger. This upgraded option has this higher rating printed on the rear and also features a slightly different case back, which is noticeably thinner, more heavily beveled and features circular notches as opposed to the square ones on its predecessor. The upper of the stainless steel case features a polished finish throughout, reminiscent of that on the original Daytona, and the overall look this provides is also incredibly similar. At least at a glance. You get a highly reflective and very flat side profile with a slight curvature at the lugs. When you look closely, you can tell that those edges aren't as precise as those on a luxury watch, though this is still impressive and has a surprising heft for such a budget piece. Pagani Design sent me this watch out of the blue, so I had no say in terms of the colorway. What arrived was this rose gold version with a colored bezel insert and accents. Honestly, this wouldn't be my first choice, as I think often, when not done correctly, rose gold can cheapen the overall appearance of the watch, which is certainly the case here. The bezel in particular looks overly flashy, especially when combined with the matching center links on the bracelet. I think some of the other colorways look much less cheesy. Nevertheless, as previously mentioned, you get the secure screw-down chronograph buttons and crown, which aid the water performance. Each features a large amount of grip, making adjustments incredibly easy, and the pushers also have a very distinct, almost two-phase clunk to them when compressed. I suspect this has something to do with the movement, which we'll talk about in a moment. Before we get there though, the dial is worth briefly touching on. For the most part, it's a direct rip-off of the Rolex Daytona, but surprisingly there are a few things I prefer on this Pagani. The main one being that this model only features 3 lines of text, including the logo, rather than the paragraph that you get on modern Daytonas, which I think looks ridiculous. Other than that, you get a very comparable overall look, with the chapter ring and applied markers around the perimeter being a clear copy and paste job. Unlike the Rolex, this features an inked logo below the 12 o'clock index and a date window at the bottom right. The date wheel sits nice and tight to the cutoff as well, meaning there's no gaping hole like we've seen with some of the other watches that I've covered before. Personally, I think it makes the watch look better put together when it's nice and tight like it is here. While the sub-dials look the same, they are slightly different. The second hand operates on the lower of the 3, but then you have a 60-minute timer to the left paired with a full 24-hour one to the right. The latter two subdials on the Rolex only time up to half of those durations. You get a virtually identical handset with a slim black line and lume adorning the main hands, alongside a chronograph second hand that bobs along when activated. Now surely for £60 this can't be utilising a mechanical chronograph movement, can it? Well, as you may have guessed, no, that isn't the case. However, it's still one of the best parts of this watch as it's utilising a Seiko VK63 Mecha Quartz movement. I've reviewed many of these in more expensive watches, but it's a great choice in this budget watch as it gives you the reliability and affordability of quartz, whilst providing some of the elegant sweep that you get with a mechanical watch. It's not the smoothest out there, but when you set it off, it's still pleasing to look at. And yet another nice to have addition comes in the form of the sapphire crystal over the dial. This doesn't appear to utilise any form of anti-reflective coating, so you may struggle to read it at certain angles. Despite this, it's still fundamentally the same material you'll find in the original Rolex, providing excellent scratch resistance and complete peace of mind. Well, unless you heavily impact the watch. Very few watches in this price bracket use a piece of sapphire, so along with the movement, this is an unexpected bonus. The quality of the bracelet is also surprisingly good for the money. Not only are these fully solid links, including the end links, but they also house the screw pin system, which I find a dream to adjust at home compared to some other cheap options. You even get a mini flathead screwdriver in the box to adjust these with as well. At first, I even thought they'd managed to copy the Rolex Glide Lock clasp system, as on the surface it looks very similar. Upon closer inspection though, it appears to be a copy of the Easy Link system, which you can click in and out of place to compensate for your wrist as it expands and contracts throughout the day due to temperature. While the system works quite well and certainly leaves a very sleek looking outer, it's a pain to set up initially. So be prepared to do some fiddling the first time you test out the watch. Other than that, it's one of the most comfortable clasp systems I've tried, and overall the bracelet is far superior to most rival offerings in this price range. My only real complaint is that I'm not sure the tone of the brushed silver links is the best match to the tone of the polished case, as they appear to have a slightly different hue to them. I imagine this could vary with other colorways, and I'm not sure if it comes across on camera. It feels like that on the bracelet has maybe like a slight yellowy tinge. Maybe you could let me know if you see this too in the comments. So all in all, that's what we get for 99% less than a real Rolex. And to tell the truth, I think most people would agree that we get far more than 1% of the watch. Is it better than a Rolex? No. For those of you accustomed to luxury watches, I'm sure you'll be able to tell pretty quickly that this is no high-end piece. The finishing isn't as nice as in the renderings, and you'll notice the odd minor quality control issue when you look closely. It's difficult for me to comment on the design because, apart from the lack of Rolex logo, it just looks like a Daytona, and that is the sticking point with this watch. If you simply want a wristwatch with the Daytona aesthetics but you can't afford the real thing, this is a great, highly affordable alternative which gives you that look for less. You'd also feel much better wearing this than some type of illegal replica. However, if you're more generally after an attractive, quality chronograph, this provides nothing in the way of originality. The specifications are excellent, and Pagani designers once again impressed me with the quality, but there are certainly more unique watches out there. This brand does have some more unique designs, like that one that I looked at a while back, so I'd be interested to see more of them in the future, but this homage is listed below if you want to grab one.